we live in a world where doing is preferred over just being. And there's a number of different reasons for that. The kind of economy that we have almost demands that doing is the main thing. You know, you have to produce, you have to be competitive, you have to be powerful, which is why when I speak to people who've just retired, I say, how's things? And they'll say, oh, I'm busier than ever. And I'm thinking, why are you busier than ever? When I retire, I don't want to be busier than ever. But the reason they're busier than ever is because busyness becomes a badge. It becomes a way of finding your value. So the whole of our society is set up to make us assume that speed and productivity are what makes us human beings. I do some work with a Vancouver-based organisation called Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries, and every year they have an artist retreat, and my job in that context is to just give them some theological ways of thinking about the difficulties they're going through. The problem that they had was instrumentalisation, that they felt that they were only worth what they produced and only as good as the last song that they sang. And so what I had to say to them was, that's true, because that's the way that neoliberal market-based economics works. But it's difficult to break past that because all of us are, kind of find our value in our work or find a value in what we produce. But that's not the way that the kingdom of God is. You find your value just because you are who you are. You may or may not succeed in your career. I read a really interesting article in the New York Times recently, titled something like Recession Anxiety. Now, recession anxiety happens when people who are really, really successful and get to the top of the tree, but are terrified of losing it. And so they spend their whole careers working to get this, and then they're even more anxious because they're up there waiting to tumble back. And that kind of typifies what the outcome of the way our society thinks is going to be on your mental health. But in the kingdom of God, it's the exact opposite. You can achieve that, that's great, but that's not the point. If you look at the Genesis account of creation, God blows God's Spirit into all of creation. So everything that lives because God's breath is within it, which is a very, very beautiful thing that we're all held in our existence by the very breath of God. It's like soul to soul, spirit to spirit. It's a very beautiful image. That's the case for elephants and tigers or anything else. The only thing that seems to mark us out as different is that God decides to talk to Adam. So the image of God is God's gift to Adam, of God's relationship to Adam. And that's what makes human beings different, not their physical or psychological. Just that fact that God just loves people and speaks to people. And nothing ever changes that. When Paul talks about the idea that nothing can separate us from the love of God, he doesn't feel in brackets, except for this, except for this, except for that. Nothing can separate it. Now you might not feel that. You might not feel that's happening to you, but that's where your dignity is based. You're made in the image of a God who really does love you, who really does care for you, and who's marked you out from the rest of creation, and nothing can separate you from that. God says, go and care and tend for the world. Care and tend. So there's something in that creation dynamic and that creation command to care that's really important. So to be human is to care for one another and to care for creation as well. A primal responsibility of human beings is to care and to receive care. So if you ever get to that time in your life when all you can do is receive care, then all you're doing is living into another aspect of what it means to be a human being. So shifting our understanding of from what being is, the power of just being, and shifting our understanding of time, I think opens up space for just the reality of the gospel to really be obvious and transformative.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope this video has blessed you. Our crowdfunding studio relies on the generosity of our viewers. So if you would like to help us capture more conversations like the one you've just seen, you can find all of the information on how to give in our bio.